So we've just identified all the main risks to our project, the likelihood of them occurring, the consequence if each risk did occur, rated each risk, and assigned a priority based on the rating. So what we want to do now is transfer this information onto the next table in order to treat the risks. So I'm going to copy this first risk. I'm just clicking copy here. I'm using it first because it is a number one priority, and I'm going to paste it in this table. So you can cut and paste any way that suits you, and I'm going to number it 1. So I'm keeping this table consistent with the previous, so each risk is named the same and numbered according to this priority given over here. Okay, so we've established that stakeholders not agreeing on the proposed phone system is risky, so now we need to decide how we're going to treat that risk, and we might come up with a number of different treatments. So the first one we may think of is to consult widely to affirm what the new telephone system should include. So what we're going to do is go around to all the stakeholders, make sure we understand their needs. The next thing we might do is reaffirm the benefits of the new system to each stakeholder. So what we're doing here is if they tend to get deadlocked or have a predisposition to get deadlocked, you can reaffirm, well, look, if we don't get this new system, then the organisation won't run as smoothly, we won't be as productive, all those different things. So you're reminding them of why the project's there in the first place. And if you can't agree, we simply don't get a new phone system. So you're simply bringing them back to basics, the actual objectives and the benefits of the project. Next, if we know that stakeholders tend to disagree on most things, we might choose the phone system for them. So what I've noted there is that we choose a phone system for the stakeholders and present it in a positive light depending on who we're talking to. So we talk to the administration people, we're confirming for them or reassuring them that it has all the features that interest them. If we're talking to the engineering department, for example, we might talk about how the phone system will suit their needs. So actually applying our communication to each stakeholder group and making sure they understand why the phone system's good and will suit them. So we're taking the decision out of their hands and placing it into the hands of the project. You might think of a few other treatments. That's fine, down we go. So then we pick up the second risk priority. In actual fact, this is equal first, that's fine. So we copy that, I'm just pressing copy here, bringing it down to this table. I've just pressed Control V to paste it, and this is also a priority 1, so I'm also naming that 1 or numbering that 1. So here the end users don't know how to use the new system. So here we want to perhaps make sure provide training for all users. Another thing we might be able to do is provide user manuals for each phone. So at each phone there'll be a user manual. If someone gets stuck, they can refer to that. You might put in place some simple posters in each office or cubicle or department explaining the new system. And again, you might think of some other different things that you could do. You just list them in there that could assist with treating that risk. So once you've done that, you've decided some treatments. So once you've done that, you've decided on some treatments, we then revisit the likelihood and consequence again. So the question here is, if you were to implement these risk treatments, so now we want to revisit the likelihood and the consequence again. So if you were to input these risk treatments, would the likelihood stay the same of this risk occurring? So let's go up the top. Originally we said stakeholders may not agree. We thought this was quite likely. Once you've put all of these treatments in, would would it be just as likely that they would not agree on the system? So I would say that by the time you put these different treatments in, it would reduce the risk. So probably they're going to be more likely to agree. I've nominated two. There is a 5-point scale. It's in your PowerPoint slide, and I figure the risk would come down significantly, particularly if we chose that phone system for them and basically sold them on the solution we picked as part of the project. Now, would the consequence be the same if stakeholders didn't agree on the system? So if we did all of this and for some reason they didn't like the option we gave them, would the consequences be the same? Well, in this instance, it probably would. They'd reject the phone system. They wouldn't want put it in place, and therefore the whole project falls over. So in this instance, the likelihood comes down, but the consequence stays the same. So sometimes the likelihood's going to go down, sometimes the consequence will go down, sometimes they'll both go down if you're lucky. But we're looking for some movement here. Otherwise, it's just a matter of accepting the risk if you really can't do anything about it. Okay, the next one was end users don't know how to use the new system. So if you provided training, if you provided user manuals and some posters or something like that around the office to say this is how you use a phone in 3 easy steps or something, would that reduce the likelihood of end users not knowing how to use the system? So we'll go back up here, and originally we thought yes, it was highly likely they wouldn't know how to use it. Well, once you've done all that training, you might rate that as a 1. Now they probably will know how to use it. As long as they all go to training and talk to each other, they'll know how to use the system. Fantastic. So what would be the consequence if the end users don't know how to use the system after we've put these treatments in? Well, I would argue that now, rather than no one knowing how to use the system, probably most people would, and the consequences wouldn't be quite as bad. So maybe a couple of calls may be missed, or there might be a little bit of fallout because a few people don't know how to use it, but generally that risk event would probably come down. So we might rate that down maybe around a 3. So where originally we thought it would be catastrophic, no one will know how to use it, everything's going to be bad for the business. Now a few people might not know how to use it, and that will have some consequences, but not as great as originally. So what we do is go through all of the different risks you identified in the ratings, and you do it in order. So going by my next list, by my list I've started, this would be the next one that would go in here, and all the way down the list you go. So you do your risk priority, your risk treatment, likelihood and consequence. Once you've done that, we revise the rating. So 2 by 5 is now 10, 1 by 3 is 4, and down we go. So arguably we might get this, maybe this one ends up to be 6, this one ends up to be 2, etc. And we have a revised priority then. So this is priority 1 now. According to this little thing I've made up here, this would be 2, that would be 3, and that would be 4, and down the line we go for as many risks as you have. So you basically revisiting each risk, thinking about, well, if I put this treatment in, how would it affect the risk management or the risk issues associated with the project, revising the ratings, and the last column is to assign someone responsibility over each of these risks. So stakeholders not agreeing on the proposed system, you might decide the project manager really has to deal with that, or it could be a team member. It's up to you and your project. End users don't know how to use a new system, you might assign someone in your project team to do that training part. So let's say that Jim Hill is going to do that. And down you go, so that with each risk, someone's responsible for looking after it. So they're going to be in a project team meeting, you say, Jim, how's that training aspect going, and people knowing how to use the system, and Jim would be able to report on that. So essentially that's how you do that part of the risk table. The final section is just on reviewing and evaluating this entire risk plan. So here you want to think about what processes or things need to be in place. So for example, you might at every team meeting discuss the risk management plan and how it's going, and are any new risks popping up. So if you've got a very dynamic project and risks are popping up everywhere all the time, every single meeting you might be discussing risk. If on the other hand you have a very stable project, you might just visit the risk issues once a month, or maybe even just at the end of the project, and say, how did this risk management plan go? Do we need to make it a little bit better for the next project. So this is all about the big picture stuff. When do we look at this risk plan and reassess it, reevaluate it, update it? That's what that review and evaluation section is about. So again, just a few paragraphs. They can be in point form, dot points, no problem. Just make sure you don't forget to complete that review and evaluation section.